Lightning split the sky as Emily Harron stood barefoot on the soaked porch. Rain hammered the street like a warning she couldn't escape. Her hands clutched a worn sketchbook, the only thing she managed to grab. Behind her, the door slammed with a force that echoed in her chest. Accusations still rang in her ears, sharp and merciless. She hadn't stolen anything, yet the verdict was final. Her parents wouldn't look at her, not even once. Vivian watched from the hallway, calm and unreadable. A single nod from her sister sealed everything. Emily felt the last bridge burn behind her in the cold rain. She stepped off the porch, trembling but silent. Each step sank into water, swirling around her feet. The world felt vast, empty, and unbearably real. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew there was no turning back. Emily arrived in Portland with a backpack, $18, and a quiet ache she couldn't name. The bus station smelled of metal, damp clothes, and late-night exhaustion. She stepped onto the sidewalk, unsure of where safety might exist. The city lights blurred in the mist, as if refusing to fully reveal themselves. She followed the crowd until the noise felt too heavy to bear. A small art supply store glowed at the corner, warm and strangely inviting. She walked in because she had nowhere else to go. The owner noticed her soaked clothes and trembling fingers. He didn't ask questions, which felt like a gift. She asked if he needed help with anything at all. He pointed to stacks of canvases that needed organizing. Emily worked without speaking, grateful for the distraction. The quiet hum of the shop steadied her breathing. When she finished, he handed her a cup of tea. The warmth spread through her hands like mercy. He offered her a part-time job for the weekends. She accepted without hesitation, feeling something close to relief. At night, she stayed at a small hostel with creaking floors. The bunk bed springs groaned whenever she turned. But it was a roof and a pillow, and that was enough. She drew every night until her hands numbed. Her sketchbook filled with images she didn't plan. A girl walking barefoot beneath relentless rain. A house with no lights in any window. Hands reaching for something they would never touch. Emily couldn't stop drawing those scenes, no matter how hard she tried. Pain leaked into every line she sketched. But people at the hostel watched her with quiet fascination. They asked if she planned to become an artist. She shrugged because hope felt dangerous to hold. Still, she kept filling page after page. One morning, the shop owner left a flyer on the counter. It advertised a low-cost painting class for beginners. He said she should try it just once. Emily almost refused out of fear she didn't belong. But that night, she signed up anyway. The classroom smelled of oils, varnish, and nervous ambition. Students chatted softly while setting up their easels. Emily stayed near the back, hopping to disappear. The instructor noticed her hesitation and walked over. He studied her sketches with slow, thoughtful attention. Then he said something that startled her. "You've survived something, and you're painting it." Emily didn't answer, but the words settled deep. The class became the one place she felt steady. She learned how color could bruise or heal. She learned how shadows could speak louder than shapes. She learned that silence could be turned into art. Months passed, and her work grew bolder. The barefoot girl in the rain appeared in every piece. Viewers sensed something raw in the imagery. Some felt unsettled, others deeply moved. A small gallery owner approached her after a student showcase. He asked if she had more pieces like those. Emily lied and said yes, even though she had none. She worked for weeks without sleep to create them. When the gallery finally displayed her paintings, people stopped to stare. They didn't know her story, but they felt it. For the first time, Emily realized she had carved a place in the world. Not because someone opened a door for her, but because she forced one open with trembling hands and unspoken hurt. She wasn't the barefoot girl anymore. Not yet. But she was learning to walk again. Emily's name began appearing on small art blogs and local newsletters. Each mention felt unreal, like reading about someone she barely knew. She kept her head down, afraid success might vanish if she blinked. But invitations slowly filtered into her inbox, polite and persistent. One was from a mid-sized gallery, known for edgy, emotional work. They wanted her pieces for a group exhibition in late spring. Emily reread the email several times before believing it. Her hands trembled with the familiar mix of doubt and longing. She accepted, then worked nonstop until colors blurred into each other. The night of the exhibition arrived with soft jazz and echoing footsteps. The gallery smelled of perfume, varnish, and careful admiration. Emily stayed near the far wall, hidden behind tall sculptures. Guests drifted from painting to painting like slow-moving tides. Some paused at her work, murmuring to each other in hushed tones. She tried not to stare, afraid of reading disappointment. Then she heard a voice she recognized in an instant. Vivian's voice was unmistakable, smooth and precise like a blade. Emily froze before daring to look. Vivian stood in the center of the gallery, elegant in a tailored suit. Her posture radiated confidence, learned from years of curated success. She held a sleek tablet and spoke with two executives beside her. Emily felt the ground shift as 10 years collapsed into a single heartbeat. She hadn't imagined their worlds would ever collide again. Yet here Vivian was, perfectly at ease in Emily's new reality. Emily moved behind a display to stay out of sight. She couldn't stop staring at her sister's polished smile. It was the same smile from long ago, beautiful, calm, and cruel in silence. A gallery assistant approached Vivian and whispered something. Vivian glanced around the room with sharp curiosity. Emily's stomach tightened as their eyes almost met. She stepped back quickly, pretending to study a sculpture. Her pulse thudded against her ribs like a trapped bird. Later in the evening, a curator approached Emily with a warm grin. He introduced himself and praised her work with thoughtful detail. Then he mentioned something that turned her blood cold. He said the exhibition's PR consultant had taken special interest in her. Her name was Vivian Hale, and she requested Emily's portfolio. The words hit like a slow, inevitable strike. Emily thanked him and walked toward the exit before panic swallowed her. Outside, the night air trembled against her skin. The city lights flickered, as if watching her unravel. She leaned against a brick wall, trying to steady her breathing. Vivian had found her without even knowing it. Or worse, maybe she had known all along. Emily replayed the scene inside the gallery. Every gesture, every glance. She sensed something shifting beneath the surface, subtle and dangerous. Vivian's world and hers were no longer separate. They had collided, and neither of them could undo it. Emily felt the old wound pulse like a warning. But this time, she wasn't a defenseless girl in the rain. She was someone with a voice, a craft, and an audience. The realization settled in her chest like a spark waiting to burn. Vivian's return was not an accident. It was the beginning of a confrontation neither of them could avoid. Emily stepped away from the wall and started walking. Her path had changed forever, and she felt it with every breath. The night of the gallery opening arrived with an electric hum in the air. Emily adjusted her jacket, keeping her hands tucked in the pockets. The crowd moved around her like a living current of eyes and whispers. She had rehearsed her calm face for hours, but her pulse raced. Vivian entered wearing a sharp black dress, instantly commanding attention. Her smile was polished, precise, and dangerous in its perfection. Emily felt it slice through the room before they even spoke. Guests mingled, sipping wine, commenting on paintings with careful voices. Emily drifted toward her display, pretending to study her own work. Vivian approached with a slow, deliberate grace that made Emily tense. "Your pieces are powerful," Vivian said, voice smooth and controlled. Emily's lips pressed into a line, acknowledging the comment without warmth. Vivian tilted her head, eyes scanning the room like she owned it. "You've come a long way, Emily," she continued, hinting at history unspoken. Emily's stomach tightened, but she refused to let anger show. The words carried the weight of all the years they had lost. A guest asked Vivian a question, and she turned with effortless charm. Emily watched her sister smile at strangers, a mask perfected over a decade. She felt a flicker of something sharp, an old wound reopening. Emily shifted, letting her eyes graze Vivian's without direct confrontation. Vivian caught the glance, a tiny hesitation passing across her face. Emily's chest tightened at the sight of the unspoken recognition. A toast was called, glasses clinking in harmonious chaos. Vivian raised her glass, eyes briefly meeting Emily's across the room. Emily returned the nod, cold, measured, carrying her own quiet defiance. Conversations buzzed, but a subtle tension hung between them. Emily noticed guests occasionally glance at her work, their admiration sincere. But she felt the pull of Vivian's presence more strongly than praise. Vivian lingered near a sculpture, her posture confident, commanding. Emily's mind replayed their last encounter, 10 years ago in a storm. She remembered the fear, the betrayal, the long walk alone afterward. Now the gallery walls held her survival and her skill in every stroke. She took a slow breath and allowed herself a small, steadying smile. Vivian's smile faltered for the briefest moment, almost imperceptible. Emily recognized it immediately, the crack beneath the perfect surface. It was the first sign that her presence mattered in Vivian's controlled world. Emily sipped her wine, feeling the thrill of subtle power. No words needed to be said to make her point clear. The crowd buzzed, unaware of the invisible tension between sisters. Emily's calm exterior masked the storm of emotions underneath. Every glance, every movement, became a silent conversation of dominance. Vivian laughed at a joke someone told, but the edge in her eyes remained. Emily turned her gaze back to her paintings, letting the silence speak. She felt the old fear fade, replaced by cautious satisfaction. The night would stretch on, full of observation and careful maneuvering. And Emily knew this was only the beginning of a confrontation long overdue. She straightened, took a final glance at Vivian, and let herself exhale. The first crack in the facade had appeared, and she had noticed it first. The auction hall was buzzing with muted excitement and whispered speculation. Emily walked in quietly, her portfolio tucked under her arm. She had chosen one painting above all others for this moment. Barefoot Child captured the girl she once was, drenched and abandoned. The lights dimmed as the auctioneer approached the podium, commanding attention. Emily positioned the painting on the center easel with careful precision. A hush fell over the crowd as the first gavel struck, signaling the start. The auctioneer's voice echoed. Up next, a work by an emerging artist of profound depth. Emily held her breath, aware of every eye in the room. When her painting was revealed, a collective murmur ran through the audience. The caption was read aloud, painted by the girl who was thrown out barefoot at 16. Gasps and whispers rippled across the hall like a wave of shock. Vivian froze, her poised smile faltering for the first time all evening. Emily's chest tightened, but she stood calm, letting the moment speak for itself. The spotlight hit Vivian as the crowd began to connect the dots. She looked around, searching for answers, realizing the truth had emerged. Camera flashes captured the exact instant her composure cracked. Emily's painting told a story no press release could hide. The girl in the rain, once powerless, now held the room's full attention. Vivian's voice was caught in her throat as she tried to regain control. The auctioneer continued, praising the technique and emotional intensity. Guests leaned closer to examine the intricate brushstrokes and raw emotion. Whispers of recognition spread quickly. Vivian had underestimated Emily's rise. Emily's gaze remained steady, watching the world react to her story. Vivian's perfectly constructed world began to tremble before the room. A journalist scribbled notes furiously, capturing every flicker of shock. The painting was more than art. It was Emily's truth laid bare for all to see. Vivian's lips quivered, betraying the pride she had once wielded like armor. The gavel struck again, finalizing the sale, but the real victory was visible. Emily didn't smile or celebrate. She simply observed the balance restored. Vivian retreated to a quiet corner, attempting to mask her unraveling. Conversations around them buzzed, analyzing the moment with excitement and awe. Emily felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense of justice that needed no words. The weight of years, spent in silence, now lifted slightly from her shoulders. Vivian's power, once untouchable, now appeared fragile under public scrutiny. Emily's work had rewritten the narrative, without confrontation or speech. She moved away from the spotlight, letting the crowd absorb the story. Her calm presence contrasted with Vivian's stunned, uneasy retreat. The room slowly returned to murmurs, but the impact lingered. Every brushstroke of Emily's painting carried a decade of survival and resilience. The audience understood, whether consciously or not, that the truth had arrived. Vivian, once untouchable, now faced a reckoning beyond her control. Emily walked quietly to the exit, leaving the echoes of her statement behind. No applause was needed. The painting had done everything. Her eyes met Vivian's one last time, a silent acknowledgement of change. The world had witnessed the unveiling of what had been hidden for years. Emily left the hall feeling lighter, the storm of the past momentarily settled. She had taken her first, deliberate step toward reclaiming the life that had been stolen. The story of Barefoot Child exploded across social media within hours. Hashtags trended, linking Emily's past with the striking image of her painting. News outlets picked up the story, dissecting every detail of the revelation. Vivian's name was repeated endlessly, now tangled with scandal and surprise. Emily watched from her studio, silent, letting the world unfold around her. She felt no glee, no satisfaction, only a quiet sense of equilibrium. Vivian's career faltered almost immediately, invitations and contracts withdrawn. Colleagues who once praised her work turned away, unwilling to defend her. A journalist tracked her to a city sidewalk, capturing her vulnerability. Vivian stumbled, mascara running, as flashes lit the scene mercilessly. Passers-by stopped to watch, some sympathetic, some shocked by her collapse. Emily saw the footage later, her heart steady but her mind reflective. The woman who had once held all the power now seemed fragile and small. Emily's rise had not been loud or boastful, but it had reshaped the landscape. Stories circulated of Vivian losing deals, being excluded from exhibitions. Friends whispered that the world had finally seen the truth about her past. Emily received messages of support from strangers moved by her resilience. She read each one carefully, absorbing the quiet encouragement without distraction. Vivian's attempts to regain control were clumsy, public, and painfully obvious. Paparazzi followed her every move, capturing every stumble and hesitation. Emily's work became the anchor point, reminding audiences of authenticity. The contrast between the sisters was stark, almost poetic in its symmetry. Emily felt a sense of justice, but it was tempered by the weight of empathy. She understood how fragile human pride could be when confronted with truth. The city seemed to buzz with a mix of fascination and judgment. Emily continued to paint, letting her emotions pour onto every canvas. Each brushstroke became a meditation on endurance and renewal. Her studio windows reflected the rain outside, steady and indifferent. Vivian retreated from public life, her presence in the industry diminished. Emily did not seek vengeance. Her art had done the work for her. She received invitations to exhibitions, each one affirming her skill. Critics commented on the emotional depth and honesty in her paintings. Emily felt the past loosen its grip, a little more with each passing day. She wandered through the city streets, observing the ordinary life around her. People passed, unaware of the storm that had once defined her sister's fate. Emily's gaze lingered on small details, the kind unnoticed by others. She walked calmly, carrying herself with the quiet confidence of someone rebuilt. The world had shifted subtly, recognition and consequence balanced. Emily's reflection in shop windows reminded her of the girl in the rain. But now, she saw strength where once there was only fear and pain. Every step she took felt deliberate, a reclamation of space and self. Vivian remained a memory of conflict, a lesson etched deeply into Emily's mind. The city continued its rhythm, indifferent yet witness to the aftermath. Emily smiled faintly, understanding that life's scales had tilted at last. She returned to her studio, brushes ready, and a heart lighter than before. The past had spoken, the present held clarity, and the future waited quietly. Emily painted with steady hands, knowing she had finally reclaimed her story. Emily's phone rang unexpectedly late in the afternoon. The caller ID displayed a number she hadn't seen in 10 years. Her hand trembled slightly before she answered. It was her father, his voice soft and hesitant. "Emily, can we talk?" he asked, each word weighed with guilt. She paused, listening to the silence that followed. Her mother's voice came next, trembling, laden with regret. "We were wrong to believe Vivian without asking you," she admitted. Emily stayed quiet, letting the words settle into the space between them. 10 years of unanswered calls and cold dinners had led to this moment. She arranged to meet them at a small cafe downtown, neutral ground. When she arrived, they were already there, heads bowed in quiet shame. Her father's hands gripped the coffee cup as if holding on to courage itself. Her mother's eyes glistened with unspoken apologies and sorrow. Emily studied them, noting the lines of age and regret etched into their faces. They looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of their past mistakes. Her mother spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't take back what we did, Emily. We failed you." Emily nodded, her throat tight with emotions she had long suppressed. Her father added, "We believed her lies. We should have listened to you." For a moment, the cafe felt impossibly quiet, like the world had paused. Emily thought of the girl she had been, 16, barefoot in the rain. The memory lingered, sharp and unyielding, but softened by years of growth. She chose her words carefully, measured and calm. "I don't need excuses. I needed truth, and now I live it." Her parents flinched at the honesty, but it was the balm they needed. They spoke cautiously, as if afraid to fracture the fragile moment further. Emily noticed the hesitation in their gestures, the care in their tone. They wanted forgiveness, but she knew it could not erase the past. She sipped her coffee slowly, allowing the bitterness to ground her. Her father looked up, eyes pleading silently for understanding. Emily offered a small, measured smile, not for them, but for herself. "I can forgive. That doesn't mean I forget," she said softly. Her mother nodded, tears spilling, relief and sorrow mingling together. They talked about the years they had lost, the silence, and the misunderstandings. Emily listened more than she spoke, absorbing their regret without anger. The cafe's bustle continued around them, indifferent to the quiet reconciliation. She realized the meeting was less about healing them than reclaiming her peace. For the first time in years, she felt a subtle lightness in her chest. The conversation ended without grand gestures or dramatic apologies. It was simple, honest, and unembellished, a reflection of who she had become. Emily left the cafe with steady steps, feeling the weight of resentment lift. The city felt less heavy, the air clearer, as if acknowledging her resolve. She understood that some wounds never fully close, but could soften over time. Emily had faced the past, measured its depth, and walked away stronger. Her parents remained behind, quietly mourning the mistakes of their own making. She looked back only once, then turned forward, ready to continue her journey. The rain had stopped outside, leaving the streets glistening under the evening light. Emily exhaled slowly, embracing the calm after years of storm. She had reclaimed her voice, her truth, and a measure of peace she had long sought. Emily returned to her studio, the city quiet around her. She opened her sketchbook and stared at the empty page. For the first time in years, she felt no anger, only reflection. Her hands moved instinctively, recreating the night of rain at 16. This time, the girl in the painting looked calm, not afraid. Each stroke was gentle, a meditation on healing rather than pain. The rain on the canvas shimmered like light over glass. Emily stepped back, examining the work with quiet satisfaction. She understood the past shaped her, but it did not define her. Her phone buzzed with messages about a new exhibition opening soon. Reporters asked where she would go next, her career poised for more. Emily smiled softly, answering simply, walking forward. She slipped on a new pair of shoes, feeling their weight and support. Each step outside was deliberate, a reclaiming of her own journey. The city streets glistened from a fresh evening rain, lights reflecting. Emily walked confidently, the sound of her shoes echoing softly. Her gaze lifted to the skyline, imagining the paths yet to explore. She felt the balance she had sought for a decade finally settle. The past whispered behind her, but she moved ahead with steady purpose. Her steps carried her into the night, toward a future of her own making.